This week, we welcome Ed Rossi, Vice President of Product Management and Asset Inventory and Discovery at Qualys, to discuss reinventing asset inventory for security. In the security news, SafeBreach adds support for new advanced attacks to the Microsoft Defender Endpoint Evaluation Lab. Stellar Cyber XDR Kill Chain allows security analyst teams to disrupt cyber attacks. BugCrowd is awarded a U.S. patent for crowd-enabled vulnerability detection. Microsoft puts PCs in the cloud with Windows 365. And funding and acquisition updates from Sysdig, AttackIQ, Stitch, SentinelOne, and more. We wrap up the show with two micro interviews from RSA Conference 2021, Mark Rawls from Acunetics by Invicti, and Wayne Harbor from GitLab. Stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
Stopping advanced threats requires knowing exactly what you're up against. ExtraHop Reveal X is the only solution that shows you not just where intruders are going, but where they've been. 90-day look-back and complete network visibility across the data center, cloud, and device edge helps security teams respond 84% faster with ExtraHop Reveal X network detection and response. Explore the interactive demo at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. Wide-scale adoption of cloud applications, an increase in remote workers, and expansion of branch offices has rendered the centralized, on-premises security model impractical. Enter Cisco Umbrella. Umbrella now includes secure web gateway, firewall, and cloud access security broker functionality, plus integration with Cisco SD-WAN, all delivered from a single cloud security service. It helps businesses of all sizes secure their network and extend protection to roaming users and branch offices. Security doesn't have to be complicated. Get simple, smart, and powerful security with Cisco Umbrella. Visit securityweekly.com/Cisco Umbrella to learn more. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 235 of Enterprise Security Weekly for July 21st, 2021. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined remotely by Adrian Sanabria. Adrian, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Terribly missing traveling, thanks to Tyler's stories there. I literally have a list of places that I want to go on my whiteboard over here.
It's awesome.
And Rhode Island is on there.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, you can come up soon. Mr. Tyler Robinson is here with us. Hey, Tyler.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good.
To be back in the country. You can live vicariously through me, Adrian, until we go meet somewhere fun.
Yeah, Tyler just visited my homeland of Armenia, which is awesome.
Beautiful country.
That'll do. That'll do. I can live off of stories for a while.
I feel like we have a closer connection now, so...
Oh, we're kindred brothers now.
That's right.
You're Paul John, I'm Tyler John. We're good to go.
That's excellent. Couple of quick announcements. Cyber Risk Alliance, in partnership with InfraGard, has launched the Critical Infrastructure Resilience Benchmark Study. Measure your readiness for ransomware by completing the survey and getting your score. Visit securityweekly.com/CIRB to take the survey. In our July 22nd technical training at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, learn how guided SaaS NDR enables rapid response. That is with Gigamon, so make sure you visit securityweekly.com/webcast. Of course, if you missed any of the previous webcast or technical training, they're available at securityweekly.com/on-demand. This segment is sponsored by Qualys. You can visit securityweekly.com/Qualys to learn more about vulnerability management, detection, and response, and so much more. Ed Rossi is an experienced product management leader, with over 20 years of experience in the IT asset management and software asset management space. He recently joined Qualys as Vice President of Product Management, focused on asset inventory and discovery. Ed joins us today to discuss reinventing asset inventory for security. Ed, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate you having me.
It's nice to have you on, Ed. This is a good topic, a very timely, I think, an interesting topic, as I feel like we've been talking about the asset inventory, and many of us pundits, we sit here in our fancy studios smoking cigars going, everyone should have a complete asset inventory, but that's easier said than done, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's tremendous challenges in just getting the information, right? And we've all heard that you can't secure or manage what you can't see, and that's fundamentally true from a just a core inventory perspective. And I think what we've seen is that there's a real need to utilize multiple methods to collect the data so that you're capturing all of what is now this dynamic hybrid, cloud, on-prem, mixed environment.
Yeah, I think there's been a slow progression, right? Where I think way back in the day, we all went to the office and we used our computer, right? and there wasn't even a lot of laptops, but like you were special if you had a laptop, even back then, 20, 30 years ago. And there's just been this slow progression to where everyone works everywhere. Of course, COVID kind of pushed that to where more people were working remotely than ever before. And now I think, that's settled down a bit, and we still have this hybrid environment. We've got computers in the cloud, we've got users working all over the place, and we still have central infrastructure to manage and control, which just compounds this asset inventory problem.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny. You look at what we're doing with asset inventory. We need to find it. That is so true for multiple use cases. Obviously, IT uses asset inventory extensively for what they do, and that's really focused though on managing entitlements and license positions and hardware asset management. But from the security side, there's a whole nother view and perspective of it. But fundamentally, it's all about the starting point of the baseline is you need to find it.
Right.
You need to understand what's there.
And in finding it in the past, largely relied on, I'm going to go scan my network with all kinds of different tools, such as Qualys, and I'm going to go find stuff. But that doesn't apply today. I think today we rely more on agents. So how, in this kind of newer product suite from Qualys, how are we able to continually discover new assets that don't already have, in this example, the Qualys agent on them?
Yeah, so with cybersecurity asset management, which is our new asset management offering focused on security, we collect the data in multiple ways, and key to that is an agent. There is no better way to identify and understand and do a deep dive of inventory for an endpoint than to have an agent installed. But it's not the only method. So we also utilize and deliver a network scanner that allows us to sort of look at a set of IP addresses and say, hey, what's out there? And then once we found it, do a deep and authenticated scan. But that still assumes we have some sense of what we have in the network. So the next question is, well, what about the stuff we don't know about? And for that, we use a passive sensor where we're simply listening to the network. We're parsing all the various protocols that are passed through, and then determining, this is an endpoint, this is an IT endpoint, or maybe it's an IoT endpoint. And then categorizing it, identifying it from there.
Now, does that include things like SaaS applications or cloud virtualization hardware or different technology stacks, such as like a Lambda stack that's part of like an IP space that's still part of your your attack surface?
Sure.
Do those things get qualified with inside of that passive scanning?
Yeah, so we do some different things. Not necessarily with passive scanning. We have cloud connectors that let us connect to our clients' cloud instances, their AWS, their Azure, their Oracle Cloud, and that gives us the core functionality or the core kind of visibility on infrastructure. And then we recommend that our clients apply our agents on top of that to get really a deep view of what's inside there. Same concept for containers and other technology, mechanisms. We've got the ability to, pull the container infrastructure information, understand the various instances that exist, and then again, to drill in from there. And it's a great point because the technology is continuing to change, but at the end of the day, our clients are trying to run their businesses. They're just using the technology as best they think that makes sense. And no matter what they're using, they have a need to understand what's there and to be able to monitor and manage it.
What about disparate things like, say, licensing for something like SaaS applications or O365 entitlements or multiple tenancies? Do
Yeah.
you have the ability to manually kind of enter that and keep track of those as part of this?
So we don't focus on that side, and that's kind of the sort of the kind of the two elements or the two use cases that I mentioned at the beginning. From an IT asset management perspective, entitlement management is critical, and for example, with SaaS, you're not so much doing license position, but you're doing an understanding of how many licenses are being utilized relative to your overall subscription. And that's an opportunity for you to right size your subscription, adjust that so that you can make sure you're not overspending, or if needed, that you can add more. And so I think it's an important element. Our focus, however, is really looking at what the security professionals need when they look at inventory. And so, we're fortunate with things like SaaS products that we're able to, and we can identify those, but those are not something that goes by definition out of date, and so they're less of a focus for security professionals than the software that's on-prem, that's in cloud instances. That's where we find a real concern because of the dynamic nature, right? So we've got strong, very qualified, intelligent folks that we hire, and we say, hey, we need you to solve a problem. And they say, great, let me solve a problem. And they start pulling out new technology, new applications, and they throw it up on the cloud, and they start to solve the problem. And they're not focused on the impact from a security perspective of what they're doing. And so our goal here is to help organizations understand what's out there, and then be able to kind of mitigate that risk.
Yeah, it's interesting. In my experience, it seems every time there's a new project or we need to go solve a new problem, maybe we need to write a new application or deploy some new services, the architects and developers are like, oh, we should use this new thing. We should implement this new functionality. And you kind of abandon the old, and it's this vicious cycle. And before you know it, you end up in 3 different cloud providers using 20 different services in each. It sounds like, Ed, that the Qualys product helps us get our arms around that, right? Because I get an API integration with my cloud providers. It tells me devs are spinning up new stuff, right? And you have new assets or services to worry about. The network is being scanned for new applications and systems. And also there's an external component as well that I'll let you speak to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you an example. So we had one of our clients who's a large retail organization. They have an internal requirement to track both their authorized and their unauthorized software. Mm-hmm. And their goal is to make sure that they can understand any inconsistencies. And, software is one of these deals, right? If you have multiple multiple products doing the same thing, you're really increasing your support costs and, the potential security, sort of threat. So, at the same time, though, these guys have a pretty dynamic environment, right? They don't want to shut down, install access to all of their servers, or they don't want to interfere with daily work, but they need to understand if users are installing software that's unapproved. So what we do is we help our users define both approved and unapproved and authorized and unauthorized lists. And then obviously, compare that to the inventory so that they can clearly see what it is that's being utilized. And we do that in an automated way, and we'll apply kind of policy-based rules so that they can say, hey, I need you to show me, any unauthorized software running on our production database servers. And we'll fire up a query on that, and then we'll do a notification if appropriate, and give them proactive visibility. And I think, that for us is really key. And then it's an example of one of the ways that we add context to the inventory data and focus on the security use cases. Another example, and you kind of touched on this, Paul, is understanding what endpoints are visible on the internet, right? And so this again is another layering of information that we want to provide to our users so that they can understand, hey, not only is this running an unauthorized software, and it's a production database because we have a normalized and categorized inventory, so we understand what's going on with that particular asset. But it's also visible on the internet, and that may be okay. It may be by design, but if it's not, that's something that we want to address.
And you have a Shodan integration. I know that Sumedh mentioned before, which I think is nice.
We're going to be pulling that. We're going to be pulling an integration from Shodan to address just that. And essentially that's an outside-in view so that, while we internally using our agents and some of our other technology for the assets that we know about can look and say, hey, this asset is visible on the internet. The things that what we want to do is get sort of a third party, hey, what do we see when we're looking at our client environment from the outside?
That's great because you can do that manually, but it's a pain in the butt to operationalize it. So when it's integrated into the suite of tools from Qualys, it's one less thing I have to worry about.
Yeah, and that's really true for a few of our the kind of overlay data that we're looking at. We have clients that have manually tracked authorized and unauthorized software lists, but they do it outside the inventory. Then they have to sort of manually do queries, and that's a process that sort of by definition is always out of date. And the same for this.
Right.
You can manually go and pull that information, but then what? Right? How do you apply that effectively to your inventory, and how do you understand on an automated basis when something new occurs?
Yep. Tyler?
No, I was just curious if that is Shodan specific or other integrations are kind of applicable, something like Census.io or one of the other attack surface reduction or external visibility points that are out there.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We're starting with the baseline Shodan integration. There are a number of other tools out there. We're going to be building, and we're starting to speak with several of them to build some integrations so that we can pull that data in as well. And we've had clients who obviously have those tools and have said to us, "Hey, can you bring that information in?" And absolutely, as we move forward with this offering, we'll be doing just that.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
curious on so for this asset management database, what is an asset? Does it have to have an IP? What's that kind of I guess the core of how you track that asset? Say if assets have IP addresses change, you obviously want to know that that's still the same asset.
Yeah, so we track assets in a number with multiple kind of unique descriptors and unique IDs. And so IP is one of them. IP is not the most accurate, to your point. That can change. It can be updated. And so when we're pulling data with our own agents, obviously we have a deep understanding of the information on that asset. We actually create two kinds of assets. We call them managed and unmanaged. And managed assets are the ones that we have substantial information about, right? And so we can tell the full list of software, both applications as well as sort of patches and other things that are installed. We know a lot about the hardware. And we can do some other things as well, like do some traffic scanning to determine what's coming in and out of there. And those assets are ones that, and Qualys obviously as an overall security company, we do substantial vulnerability scanning, and so we're able to do that for all of our managed assets. We also have what we call unmanaged assets, and that's the kind of data that we'll pull in from our passive sensor, or in this case, from Shodan, where it does not match any of our managed assets. And there we'll have less baseline data. We'll just have an understanding, and so we'll kind of create that in a little bit of a different category so users can understand, hey, there's a set of stuff out there, a set of endpoints that we found. We're not quite sure what it is, and you need to decide, do you want to go and actively scan those, or do you want to set those aside? And that's really the step that we recommend, is to say, hey, if there's an asset on your endpoint, actively scan it, either put an agent on there, use our network scanner, and collect the kind of detail that you need, and then bring it into your managed world.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah, and the reason I ask, and it, this kind of connects with Tyler's comment earlier, that we're starting to see, especially in the attack surface management space, a change in the definition of what the term asset means, to expand to like a GitHub repo is an asset now, and maybe a DNS CNAME is an asset, and
Sure.
A certificate is an asset. Like you can get a lot of interesting information out of just a certificate, and you start to get into this world where either nothing, not everything has an IP, or in the cloud space things can be very ephemeral. If you're cranking up and taking down containers all the time, that I used to ask a lot of vendors that like what happens to your dashboard if I create and destroy 8,000 assets a day in the cloud? Does it go nuts? Can it handle that?
Yeah. So absolutely. And you made a good example there. For example, certificates. It's another thing that we collect. We've got a module designed to do just that. And there's the way that folks use technology and the way the technology is being applied now, really does change some of what it is we think of when we say asset. And so, we track it in multiple different ways. I think the need to understand all of those kinds of elements are absolutely relevant, to looking at your attack surface, or simply to understand whether or not your mechanisms operationally are going to function. Right, so you get a certificate that expires, and you could potentially shut down a production web service pretty quickly. So it's that's another example of the kind of data that we want to capture. And then in terms of the speed of change, that is what this world is all about right now. So we pull in the data, we are constantly updating it. To especially, for example, with the cloud, so that we understand the infrastructure, the various instances that are out there, and we can update that information quickly, so that it's current when our users are looking at the data and making decisions.
Ed, I wanted to ask about managing application assets in terms of what data points do I have? Because when I think about vulnerability management, I like to know, obviously, first, what applications are installed, but how many instances are there of that? What types of assets are they installed on? Is there usage information? Is it a very well-used app? Or when's the last time they started it up? Like things like that. Like what kind of data points do you have on application usage?
Yeah. So, so we have just to sort of build us from the bottom, we take the baseline discovery data, and we normalize it using our hardware and software libraries, to give us a consistent view of what it is that's out on the network. And that's true, wherever, for example, with the software, wherever it's installed, right? I mean, a product that's installed on a legacy on-prem server, and that same product installed on the cloud is the same product, and you need to understand that from a security perspective to make sure that you're up to date, from a IT perspective to make sure that you've got an entitlement that covers both of those instances. So we have a pretty strong library and a categorization capability and classification, so that we're understanding, well, what kind of software is it? Desktops or laptops, or really, virtual machines or cloud instances, or any one of a number of other options. And then we drill in and we look at, well, we've got the applications, and we can see some baseline information on installed, and we can look at for things like last used, and it starts to give you a sense of what's being utilized, what's not. With our passive sensor, we can track some of the network traffic, and that gives us a sense from a more detailed perspective of what's pushing in and out, excuse me, for a given asset. And again, this is the kind of information where if you're unsure about a particular asset, if you want to understand, the potential risks, you want to look at all of that kind of data.
Yeah, that's all great stuff that ties into the vulnerability prioritization, right, aspect. I'm assuming the various modules in Qualys work together to help you determine, like, hey, I've got a lot of this and it's unpatched and it poses a risk, so I need to go do something about it.
Yeah. When we have a unified cloud platform, and so the cybersecurity asset management module, CSAM, is tightly linked with our vulnerability, our VMDR module, along with all the other ones. We've got patch, endpoint detection, et cetera. And so we're able to, when we have these together, we're able to take a look at an asset and understand, what it is, where it is, who owns it, what sort of business unit. We can pull in data from from the CMDB, and we do, to collect and understand in context information about what is this asset exactly. For example, is it production, or is it test, or is it backup? You can't discover that, but that all sits there in the CMDB, and we pull that data so that you can have an understanding of the asset. And then we keep drilling down. Do we have vulnerabilities?
Right.
What does it look like from an endpoint detection perspective? Are there any patches that are needed? We kind of layer on top our own modules so that you can have a really comprehensive view when you look at an individual asset of all of the potential issues and challenges associated.
Absolutely. I didn't have any more questions. Adrian, Tyler?
Yeah, so I was going to, I see that you sync with CMDBs, and, ServiceNow probably comes up in most of your customer conversations. Yep. But, I think anytime that comes up, you hear, we've got a CMDB. Yeah, ServiceNow has like an asset management thing, but, it's always out of date. You can tell somebody put a lot of effort into it once and just kind of moved on to other things. Yeah. So I guess my question is, why, especially with these traditional tools, and does yours do anything different here? Do people struggle so much to keep the stuff up to date? Is it because there was a lack of automation? A lot of it was manual, like obviously assigning asset owners, there's going to be some manual component to that. But I don't know, can you create rules and say, if anything new pops up, attached to this AWS account or in this IP range or something like that, automatically, assume it's owned by this group or this person?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think we focus right now on understanding the data that comes to us from business sources like ServiceNow, CMDB, and then we're able to obviously update that data within our world, and the kinds of rules that we focus on are really to say, hey, when we look at all this data in context, when we have unauthorized software, we have end of life and end of service data, we have assets that are internet facing or of a certain asset criticality, because we measure that as well, and we enable our clients to define that. Let's narrow our focus down into that and say, okay, what are the assets that we care about, and tell us about those. I think looking at setting up automated rules for things like business areas are an option in the future. It's one that has some challenges in terms of syncing up with the business systems to make sure that they work correctly.
Fantastic. Ed, anything else you want to convey to our audience about this is a newer feature, right?
So we are introducing cybersecurity asset management, which sits on top. We have a free asset inventory tool called Global Asset View, and so cybersecurity asset management sits on top of that. And we're literally rolling it out and releasing it as we speak here today. So we're very excited about that. I encourage you to go to the Qualys website and take a look, sign up for a free trial. come see us at Black Hat. We have a booth and we'll be there in person, or if you can't make that, come check us out virtually. But this to us is fundamentally focused on being able to take this core inventory data, apply security context to it, and enable you to understand the specific areas of focus and concern in an automated way. And I think that's really the key. We'll deliver reporting. We have interactive reporting that we're rolling out, all to give you a way to sort of group and manage that data, because what we see is there's so much of it. How do you understand what areas you need to focus on?
Fantastic. Ed, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
For folks that want to learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/Qualys. Coming up next, the Enterprise Security News. Stick around.